What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
Hey people, how you are doing today? Together Destiny here, and welcome back to my channel. How you are doing? Hope you guys are doing great. So today's video is a video of a woman who came to discuss the moment you realize that you have to break up from your partner. This may be your ex, divorce. What was that moment you look and just click on your, like, you know what, it's time for me to go, it's time for me to just walk out of this place. So this woman went on to ask this question and went on to share her story of the moment she realized this is the time for her to walk out of this relationship, out of her partner, to end this relationship. And she gave her own story, her own light board, and I find this conversation so interesting. Let's go hear what this woman have to say, then we'll come back and talk.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner? I'll go first. My ex-husband and I had been in couples therapy for many months, and at our very last appointment, the therapist looked at my husband and said, "Do you think she needs to be on more antidepressants?" And I was on Zoloft at the time, and he nodded yes. And she turned to me and said, "Maybe you need to up your dose." And that was the moment where I realized that if I need to be on more drugs to stay in this relationship, then it's not the one for me.
So please go down in the comment section and share your thoughts. Love to know what you think about our story down in the comment section. And I totally agree. Like, a lot of us women, we stick up in a relationship that is not serving us for longer than we should. And it's always that one thing that usually just click, that just hit the like button and just make us like know that, you know what, it's time to go, it's time to end this relationship because this relationship is not serving us or is not safe for us anymore. I get it. I get our own story. So go down in the comment section and share your thought. This got a lot of people to share their story and share their thought on this. And I find some of this story very interesting, but some I haven't even heard them myself. So we're going to watch people's reaction together. So with that all said, go down and share your own thought. I'm going to share my own thoughts and my own light bulb moment. So with that all said, let's go ahead.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner? I'll go first. My ex-husband.
My epiphany moment was when I had just had our baby, and he was there for the birth, but then he had left to go take care of his other kids, and he came back that same day with his kids, with 3 of his kids, and then he left again. Whenever he leaves again, he doesn't come back until the morning of the day I'm about to leave. And he comes in and he tells me that he didn't like the name that I had chosen for him. Okay. And I said to him, well, you weren't here to help me choose it, so it is what it is. He starts yelling at me and going off after I had just had his baby and had my tubes tied. I'm like, are you serious?
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
It was when he was seeing a therapist. This therapist specifically deals with people who have been convicted of domestic violence or are on the spectrum to commit domestic violence. And he's been practicing for about 30 years. He called me one day and he said, "Helen, in the 30 years that I've been practicing, I've had 2 men actually commit murder to their partner or their wife." And he said, "Your current partner exhibits every behavioral trait of those 2 men." He said, if you don't get out, it's not if he is going to kill you. It is when he is going to kill you.
Whoa.
Your life depends on leaving.
Whoa.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
2.5 years in, the pandemic hit, and I discovered BTS. And I had to ask myself at one point why I felt more emotional fulfillment watching 7 people having fun with one another on a screen than actually feeling emotionally fulfilled with the person I was supposed to be getting emotional fulfillment from.
That's right.
And I was a very, very go with the flow person, and he was giving me below bare minimum. So, yeah, so thanks BTS.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
So in 2017, my uncle came to visit my mother. He was in St. Louis and we were in Atlanta. He basically told me to be happy. He said he'd been in love with somebody who basically didn't really love him back, and he had been chasing him his whole life. He looked at me and he said, "You need to find somebody that makes you smile even when you want to cry." I didn't understand that. He said, "That guy you're with, he's a good guy, but he's not good for you." And I knew that, but to hear him say it. So I listened. My uncle went to sleep for my mother's birthday party. The night, he had a great time. He told us how much he loved us. He went to sleep and he didn't wake up the next day.
Wow.
That's how I knew that I needed to do something differently.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
He threw a cup of water in my face because my son, who was a toddler at the time, was learning how to drink water and had spilt a little bit of water on the floor. And I said, "Don't worry, it's just water." And he goes, "It's just water?" Well, if it's just water, unscrews the shaker cup, throws it in my face. Now, I had stayed through a lot with him, moved 2 provinces. We were going to couples therapy. He was going to his own individual therapist, and I was going to my own individual therapist. And when I started telling her what was going on in my relationship, she said, "You need a line in the sand. You need to come up with something that is your breaking point." And for me, it was anything physical. I set the bar so high, or I guess so low, I never thought it would be reached. I truly never thought. But the second that water hit my face in front of my 2-year-old, I've never been more embarrassed and ashamed. And I just looked at him and I was like, "That's it. That's the end of our relationship." I moved out a month later because he wouldn't.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
Oh, I'll go first. When I was still together, but things were dissolving quickly with my ex, he was here with our oldest children. My oldest children are my set of twins. And he was here with them while I was working. And I was also getting my master's. So it was his day off and he was hanging out with the kids outside. The day had started inside. When I left them, they said that they were going outside to play. The kids were 2 at the time, just turned 2. It was about 86 degrees, and I remember on my way home calling because I had a really bad feeling, and I called to see how they were doing. He said they were doing fine and that they were outside, and long story short, he had mentioned that they hadn't had water in a while. And I rushed home. I was supposed to do something else. I rushed home, mother's intuition, right? And they were outside in jogging suits and had no sunscreen on, their little faces were burning. They had no water. They had not had water. And
what was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
Well, this was embarrassing. So it was when he actually created a physical barrier between us in bed. Things weren't okay. I was feeling that he was rejecting me for the past couple of months, but I just didn't want to deal with it because I had too much on my plate. So this night we went to bed and he was acting kind of weird, like he was a scared child, like playing and stuff, and suddenly he just puts a pillow between us. And at that moment I was like, okay, I'm done. And I grabbed his face, I smiled and said, "You're pretty done with me, aren't you?" Yes, with his face. And it was 2 a.m. in the morning, and I just got out of bed. I packed my shit, grabbed my toothbrush from the bathroom, and I left. And it was humiliating. Don't recommend.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
Mine was when I had my daughter and she was 8 weeks old, and it was about 7 a.m. and we were sleeping, and she was a cluster feeder, so I was up all night feeding her. And he wanted to work out in my bedroom. I had a 4-bedroom house that I paid for. There were so many places to work out, so I asked, "Hey, can you work out in a different room and not blare music in here while me and the baby are sleeping?" And he said, "No, why don't you just move to the couch?" And I said, "That's weird." And he threw a whole fit, threw my fan across the room, started calling me all these names, and said if maybe I got my lazy fat whale up, I wouldn't look the way I do. And then told me to shut the up. And so then I did shut the up, and then he yelled at me for shutting the up, and then he came over and punched me in the face and started choking me and then ripped my baby from my arms. And that was, that was the epiphany moment. I had to decide, if I don't leave, either myself or my daughter will be dead. So I left.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
In November 2019, I found out my then husband, was having an affair with his coworker. We immediately started marriage counseling. We were doing weekly date nights. We were doing weekends away, anything that we could do to rebuild our trust and our marriage. And I had hope at the time, but I kept catching him in lies. So fast forward to May 2020. I asked him a simple question, a question I knew the answer to. And I watched his face as he lied to me, as the lie just so easily rolled off of his tongue. And in that moment, I knew I can never trust this man. It's as if my heart literally closed, like a door. I never cried again. I was just completely at peace being done, like completely.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
I made a video that got 3 million views over my boyfriend not doing anything for my birthday, and everyone telling me I needed to leave him. I took a step back and realized I was not this man's partner, but I was his mother. I nursed him back to health after his surgery. I bathed him. I made him meals. I changed his ice hourly for months on end. I took him on vacations like the little pet he was, and I found out he was cheating on me on those vacations, and I still stayed. He wanted to break up after he realized that he wanted to enjoy the college experience. Then, realizing that he desperately couldn't get anyone and begged for me back, I went back to him. Not one gift. He lived rent-free in my house for a year. Wow. I'm happy I'm out. Did I mention that he was still staying at my parents' house after we broke up? He still stayed in their basement after we had broken up, and didn't tell them that we'd broken up.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner? I'll go first.
He came over for my birthday with no birthday present and instead had me cook for him, let him nap in my bed. Then he leaves midday and says he needs to fly out for a work meeting. Well, the work meeting ended up being him flying out to California to sleep with and stay with his ex-girlfriend, who clearly did not know that she was the ex at the time. And I knew this from my Finsta, so yeah, he came crawling back in the best way. Like for part 2.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
I had a weekly therapy appointment every Wednesday from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. One Wednesday, I was on my way to my therapy appointment when my therapist called and said she had an emergency and she needed to cancel my appointment. So instead of going to therapy, I went through a drive-thru, I got some food, I pulled into a park, and I ate, and then I went home. I was home at the exact same time that I usually was. There was literally nothing different, and he flew down the stairs in rage. He pinned me against the wall outside, and then he threatened the throats of me, my 2 daughters, and our newborn son, because I hadn't gone to therapy. And if I hadn't gone to therapy that day, then I clearly wasn't going any other day, which had to mean I was cheating on him. I showed him where my therapist had called me, and 10 minutes later, I had gotten the food, and I had the receipt. I pulled up the GPS tracker to show the history of where I went. He didn't believe any of it. I was tired of hearing him scream at me, so I went inside, and I started making dinner for the kids. When dinner was done, I went upstairs to my room. We had separate bedrooms, and I started packing. He came in, asked what I was doing, and told him I was packing, that I was leaving. He laughed, made jokes, did the, oh yeah, sure, you're leaving, okay. And then it was the, nobody's gonna love you like I do. And finally, at 4 o'clock the next day, when I was all packed and ready to go, as a final try to stop me from leaving, he held a gun to my dog and told me he was gonna shoot him. I loved that dog, and he knew it. And I said, well, if that's what you're gonna do, that's what you're gonna do, but I'm still leaving. He then turned the gun to my daughter and said, I'll everybody here. The neighbor heard that one and called 911. The cops came. They kept him in the house and me outside the house while my friend came and picked me up. My friend drove me to the airport. I got on a plane. I landed in Missouri, walked to the airport, hugged my brother, and threw up. I spent 7 years with him. This is the morning the day before I left him. 3 days after I left him. 30 days after I left him. If I hadn't left him that day, I would have died. There's no question in my mind. He was so fierce and so convinced that I cheated on him, which I never did. He would have killed me. He would have killed the kids. But he wouldn't himself. He would have played his favorite role, the victim.
Was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
So for me, I was married to an engineer, so I knew I had to give set goals and benchmarks. So we went to marriage counseling, and I told the counselor I would like dinner to be his responsibility once a week. He doesn't have to cook, it's just off my plate. I don't care if he orders, things like that. Our counselor had probably 30 years experience. The counselor turned to my ex-husband and said, "What do you think about that?" And he said, "I don't want to do it because it seems like she's forcing me to do it." I will never forget the counselor's jaw dropping to the floor with 30 years experience. I got up, I said, "We're getting a divorce," and I'm done.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
So it was probably the day he came home from the gym, and the baby was laid down for a nap, and I'm sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee, and I'm just crying and crying. And he comes in, he's like, "What is wrong with you?" And then he like sits down, and I'm trying to explain to him how unhappy and depressed I am, and like I just don't feel like myself. And he just laughs at me, and he puts his hand right here and goes, "Titties," and just went about his day. And then later that night, I wouldn't do adult things with him, and so he kept telling me, "Oh, you're cheating on me, blah blah blah. It's fine, I'll just get it from my ex anyways, I'll get it from my baby mama, nobody wants anything from you." And so I went to go sleep in the recliner, and he came and picked me up and put me in the bed, and he's all, "No, you're my wife, you're not sleeping anywhere except for next to me." And then he pulled me in close, fell asleep, and I kept crying.
What was your epiphany moment that it was time to break up with your partner?
In 2019, I attended this training called MITT. In one of the exercises that we were doing, we were literally taking out the trash. And at that moment, I knew that my relationship was no longer serving me. I think that my heart was so invested that like my heart just grabbed that thought and just put it away. And then in March of 2020, that's when I found out that everything happened. My point is that when you know you're done, you know you're done. So it's better to follow your mind then than continue to be in a situation that is no longer serving you, because the universe will find a way to give you what you need.
Patience, sister. Anyway, guys, please go down in the comment section and share your thoughts and what you think about this story shared. And go ahead and share your own personal story if you can or you want to. Go down in the comment section and share. Love to read from you guys as always. You guys know that. And yes, holiday is over. Your girl is back home. Okay. So, for me, I find a lot of this story really, really interesting and very threatening. And a lot of us women, like I said initially in the beginning of the video, we stay longer than we should in a relationship that is no longer serving us, a relationship that is in danger to us, a relationship that is not just working because in our head or growing up, we're naturally programmed or trained to think that we are the one that is supposed to make this marriage or make this relationship work, stick it out, stick it to the end. I'm not saying that when a relationship is going through hard times, you're not going to stay by your partner and make it work. But when it's affecting your mental health, your life, your happiness, especially when you're in that state of permanent, tolerable permanent place of unhappiness. I did a video on that, so if you haven't seen that video, go check out that video. Then it's time for you to walk away, because a lot of these men, which we already seen in that video, if they know you're unhappy in that relationship, you're not happy, but they just feel like you're going to cope with it, you're going to live with it, and there's nothing. Just like the sister that was telling the story about how she was crying and the man didn't see any need for him to even find out what was really making her in that mood, depressed, not happy in that relationship, because I feel like you ain't going nowhere. Even though you're unhappy, you're still going to be there. For me personally, some of you guys know I've been with my husband for like 20 years. So I'm in a long-term relationship. But before my husband, I had my first ever boyfriend, and we broke up over a very stupid thing. That I was actually on the right. I was doing the right thing as a human being should. And he was so upset that, I betrayed him and all that. And I was in that place where I was still holding on to the relationship, begging and all that. But when the light bulb just clicked on my head and like, you know what, girl, move on, let it go, was when I called his mom. And the essence of me calling his mom, which is something we do here in Nigeria or in Africa, because I was close to his family, I have a relationship with his mom, the sisters. I called the mom, which I've already called the sisters to help me talk to him. I called the mom, and then this man called me and was like, them boy called me. I was like, don't you ever call my mom, literally threatening me for calling his mom. And immediately he ended the call. It just dawned on me like, yeah, this relationship is over. But come to think of it, I wish I didn't have to bring myself that load and start begging for that relationship, even though I know I was on the right. So yeah, that for me, that was my light bulb moment. Like, time to go, and I left, and I'm happy I did. Because even after that, even the relationship ended years later, he was coming back on like, you know what, let's come back and all that. And one thing just keeps sticking in my head. I did nothing wrong, but you were upset because your ego was bruised in that relationship, and you got to the extent of threatening me because I was trying to keep the relationship. Like, yeah, you really think that you were the prize there, okay? And I was like, nah, I don't think, I'm not going back to that. Anyway, guys, please go down in the comment section and share your thoughts. Love to know what you think about this conversation down in the comment section. I find this conversation very, very interesting. So go down in the comment section and share your thoughts. And please don't forget to keep it respectful. Here on this channel, we're allowed to disagree, but we'll do it in a respectful way. So go ahead and share your thoughts, but keep it respectful. Please go ahead and share this video with somebody that you want to be part of the conversation, because that's what we do here. We have banging conversation. So go ahead and share this video. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, smash the like button, because this helps YouTube to push out my content, and that will be you supporting your girl. With that all said, guys, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. I will see you guys in my next video. Deuces.